Welcome to my channel, The Snake Said to the River. Today we are reconstructing a truly delightful medieval recipe called Frytour of Erbes, herb fritters. These fritters are little fried puffs of dough made fragrant with fresh herbs and glorified with a drizzle of honey. In my experience, they are a guaranteed hit, and it's perfect for the springtime when herbs are coming back into abundance. I found this recipe in a 14th century English cookbook called the Forme of Cury. That original recipe says, Frytour of Erbes, taka goede herbes, grind him and meddle him with flour and water and a little yeast and salt, and fry him in oil, and eat him with clear honey. So translated into modern English, that is, herb fritters. Take good herbs, grind them up small, and mix them with flour and water and a little yeast and salt, and fry them in oil and eat them with clear honey. Medieval recipes are notoriously vague when it comes to quantities, timing, and sometimes even the ingredients themselves. So when reconstructing a medieval recipe, there's usually a lot of research and experimentation to do, which is super thrilling to me. I am so happy with the reconstruction that I settled on, so let's get right to it. Your ingredients are a large handful of fresh, fragrant herbs, 1 cup of flour, 1 teaspoon of active dry yeast, a half teaspoon of salt, 3/4 to 1 cup of fresh water, oil for frying, and honey for drizzling. At the heart of this recipe are the fresh, fragrant herbs that are strewn throughout the fritters. Now, the recipe is not specific about which herbs to use, it just says goede herbes, so good herbs. So I referenced other recipes in the Forme of Cury to see which herbs were being used in this place and at this time. I ultimately chose mine from a list in a recipe for salad. So I chose fennel greens, parsley, sage, rosemary, and so as not to shatter our world order, thyme, which appears as serpel in this cookbook. So we've got that classic medieval quartet of herbs: parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Whichever herbs you choose, gather a large handful, wash them well, and allow them to dry completely. The first thing I'm doing is pulling all the tender leaves away from the stems. The leaves are the only part of the herbs I want to use in this context, since the woody stems of the herbs would be disruptive to the fluffy, cloud-like texture that we're going for with these fritters. At this point, the recipe instructs us to grind the herbs. The Middle English verb grinden means to grind or to break into small pieces, so I'm taking a middle ground by mincing my herbs extremely small. This will allow the fragrance of the herbs to really release into the batter and will result in a pleasant and even texture. We're on to the batter now. Our recipe tells us that this is comprised of flour, water, yeast, and a little salt. Flour, water, yeast, and a little salt. The simplest of ingredients. Sift 1 cup of flour into a mixing bowl, make a little well in the flour, and add 1 teaspoon of active dry yeast and a half teaspoon of salt into the well. Pour about a 3/4 cup of lukewarm water into the flour and mix vigorously. You're going for a batter texture, not a dough texture, so it's going to be quite loose. You may even need to add up to an extra 1/4 cup of water to get that consistency right. It seems comparable to the consistency of pancake batter for me. Once the batter is smooth, add the herbs and mix again for several minutes. I like to add the herbs in a couple of stages to ensure that I use just the right amount. I'm looking for a dense, confetti-like distribution of the herbs within the batter. Once it's looking right to you, continue to vigorously beat the batter for a few minutes to get things going. was so happy that this recipe called for yeast, since it implied that the fritters would be super fluffy. I'm just using a classic dry active yeast here, but in medieval days, active yeast would have been skimmed off the top of fermenting beer to be used in cookery, which is just so cool. So now it's time to let the yeast do its work and allow the batter to rise. Our recipe doesn't specify a rising time or even that the batter should rise, but I'm using what I know about yeasted foods to fill in the gaps. I'm covering the batter with a cloth and giving it about an hour and a half to 2 hours to rise. Rise times vary with location and climate, so I'd check it every half hour or so. You'll know it's ready when it's 2 to 3 times its original volume, and while it's still quite a loose batter, it'll be nice and fluffy and jiggly, and should have plenty of lovely bubbles. Now that our batter has risen beautifully, it's time to fry our fritters. Our recipe tells us to fria hem in oile, fry them in oil. In medieval days, oil would most likely have referred to an olive oil, although nut oils were sometimes used as well. As a side note, other fritter recipes from the medieval era sometimes call for gresa, grease, as the frying medium, which refers to lard. Pour your frying oil into a pot and place it over medium heat on the stove. You'll want the oil to be deep enough for your fritters to be able to float. Once your frying oil has reached 350 degrees Fahrenheit, you can start frying up your fritters. Scoop up a spoonful of dough and use a second spoon to slide it into the oil. Like I mentioned, this dough is pretty loose, so you're trying to form just an extremely rough spherical shape as it goes into the oil. I found that these needed anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes of frying to fully cook on the inside. You'll need to flip them about halfway through their cooking time so that the entire fritter is evenly crispy. It's at this point that you really start to smell the herbs as they release their fragrance. You'll know they're ready when the outside has turned a lovely light to medium golden color and has a delicate crisp. The goal is to fry them just long enough to be crispy to the bite, but with a fluffy and airy interior. I love the fantastical shapes that these little darlings form when they hit the hot oil. They remind me of something from a medieval bestiary, all tentacled and behorned. Those little bits are extra crispy. And here's my sister snagging one of the disconnected little bits from the plate. And here's me snagging one. They're impossible to resist. Once they're finished, lift them out of the oil with some sort of long-handled kitchen implement and allow them to drain their excess oil on a plate. The last instruction in our recipe is to äta hem with clara honey, so eat them with clear honey. So I am drizzling some lovely honey over these little fritters, which just takes things to a super divine level. So here I'm drizzling that honey over the fritters, and then I'm preparing them to be served by garnishing the dish with sprigs of parsley, as well as strewing a small amount of minced parsley over top the fritters. Finally, I'm adding some beautiful edible redwood sorrel blossoms that I foraged from near my home, both for their lovely vegetal flavor and for their beauty. And now we serva hem forth. Let me tell you, these little fritters are so delicious. They're like a savory-sweet medieval donut hole. If you make these for a gathering, I guarantee you people will be lining up for them. If you're interested in more videos like this or just want to support my work, I hope you'll join me on Patreon, where I offer monthly episodes full of historical music, cookery, craft, and more. I've shared a few of my historical recipe reconstructions on there, including medieval pears in pastry, a medieval meat pie, and even a historically informed medieval vegetarian pie. I hope you enjoyed this medieval cooking adventure, and I'll see you soon.